If you are thinking about moving to the Huntsville, Alabama area, then you absolutely need to watch this video because I'm going to be sharing with you things that you will not hear from anyone else here on YouTube. And I can guarantee at least one item on this list you've never heard before. So let's get right on into the 10 things you must know before moving to Huntsville, Alabama. Starting off the bat, number one, because I know this is the make or break for so many of you, is how is the actual cost of living? Well, on paper, Huntsville's cost of living looks really good, about 9% on average, cheaper than other major cities. However, there is one category here that's more expensive, and it shocked me because I didn't even understand why. But the main part of your cost of living that really drives that number is going to be housing. And I see people make this mistake very often when you're moving from a high cost of living area. You look at the headline number here, and the median home price in Huntsville right now is about $325,000 as the time recording this video. But what that hides is that that's the median for all square footage, all single family homes. If you narrow that down and you say you want a house between 2,500 and 3,000 square feet, single family, you don't want to be sharing a wall with the neighbors, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, what is that going to run you? Well, the median for that changes a lot. You are jumping, see, I even brought notes. I wrote this down. For a brand new construction, and this is looking at the most recent day, like 6 months back, you are looking at the median sold price for new construction homes that fit that criteria of $466,000. So while really good still, especially for that size of house you're getting, there is something about that people miss. If you're moving from a high cost of living area and you've got a lot of equity and you sell it, your house that is $800, $900, $1.2 million where you're moving from is not the top of the food chain. It's, you've got a lot of houses, a lot of neighborhoods, a lot of areas that are way more expensive than yours. But over here, if you come in with a $1.2 million budget, you are at the top of the food chain. There are very few people above you, which means if you ever leave the area, and this is key, it is a lot harder to sell because there's just less buyers. So keep in mind, the low cost of living, you've really got to decide which way is important there. You know what? As a finance major, I absolutely love helping people this part of the process, figuring out your goals, what makes sense to you. So, hey, reach out to our team and we can talk all that in more detail. But the next part of the cost of living that I was shocked that was more expensive than other areas is groceries. So statistically, it's about 1% higher, and I don't even understand how, because there are so many people here in the area with chickens, with gardens. I mean, you go to work and you have coworkers that just drop a bag of tomatoes off because they can't even give it away. So with so much of that agricultural land around here, I'm just shocked, really, that food prices are a little bit higher than the national average. Not really sure what drives that. The next part that you need to know about cost of living is when it comes to your utilities. On average, MIT did a study on this area, and I think this number is too low because they found the average to be at about $180 a month for utilities. Well, that's all house dependent. I would say my personal utilities this time of the year in the summer, it can easily hit $240 for electric, and that's on a small 1,300 square foot house. So water, sewer, that's not bad at all. Usually about $80 there. That includes trash. So I would say figure between $300 and $500 a month for utilities, and that kind of gives you a lot of the big hitters that you need to know about cost of living. Back to that study by MIT with their living wage calculator, they determined that if you are a family of 4 relocating to the area, you can expect about $1,100 a month for your grocery budget. Now, we're a family of 4, but we got an infant and a toddler, and my wife, noisy mufflers, gotta love them. We're a family of 4, and my wife, she makes a lot of things from scratch, buys very little processed food. She makes her own sourdough, and so she's making these gorgeous artisan sourdough loaves for about $1 a loaf, which is incredible. So our grocery bills are a lot smaller than that because she is so good at keeping those costs down. So that is a wrap on the cost of living, but what about the job market and economy? Because who wants to move here and then face unemployment within 3 months? Well, the job market in Huntsville is really top heavy towards engineering, aerospace, and defense contracting and federal workers. That is the big major employers here in the area, driving a lot of the local economy. In fact, it is such a big driver. All these little suburbs, people, guys, they commute sometimes, it's not uncommon, over an hour far out in these little suburbs just to get to these high-paying jobs in Huntsville. It's really the big. You think of Alabama, and oftentimes there's a stereotype in your mind about it. Huntsville is not that. The federal investment here has just transformed. Actually, Huntsville is now the #1 city in the state. We eclipsed Birmingham just a couple of years ago. With that being said, if you are outside of that defense contracting, engineering, aerospace, then the job market looks very different. You'll see a very heavy manufacturing base in this area. And you know what? I've got friends in manufacturing sectors, and there's been some pullback on spending there. Some of them have had their hours cut. Some of them have had hiring freezes where maybe they're okay, but their companies are not hiring. So we're seeing that broader pullback, and unemployment data actually supports this. You're seeing a pullback in manufacturing by employment, and you know what? All those DOGE government cuts has not left the federal investment here untouched, because we're seeing a pullback there as well. Even with Space Force, even with the new FBI facility and all those other jobs moving to the area, we're still seeing, year-over-year net losses according to official data. Crazy. All right, so the next thing you want to know, and this is going to affect you most of the year, is the weather here. You don't know hot and humid till you've spent a July and an August in Huntsville, Alabama. Right now, I was trying to decide between filming this in the office or actually getting out here and showing you the city. Decided to show you the city because that's what I would want to see. But we are right now, it is 86 degrees, feels like 89, and this is actually some of the nicest weather we've had in the last couple of weeks. It has been nonstop raining, which is unusual for this time of year, but it is humid, it is hot, and you don't get hardly anything for winter. I mean, you might get an inch or two of snow accumulation a year. There's usually, but don't think that means there's not frost, because when it hits, it sucks. These roads, yeah, because we get so little snow here, when it freezes, the city does not have the infrastructure to really keep these roads as passable. And even if they try and put some chemicals on these roads to cut down that ice, all the back roads, they don't get treated. They're not as high priority. So the city kind of shuts down, schools will shut down. A lot of employers will just stay closed for safety concerns. That's how, yeah, no one knows how to drive in the snow here. Even if you're coming from up north, you know how dangerous it is when other drivers can't drive. So back to the weather, it's very hot. So as beautiful as this area is, and we'll get into some of the outdoor things later, you have to deal with this humidity all the time. All the time. And more than that, we've got tornadoes. Yep, that's the big one that scares so many people off from this area. This is a tornado prone area. You can look at, what I recommend is you look at the tornado maps and familiarize yourself with where they have hit in the past. And look, some of these massive tornadoes, they hit in the 70s. So it's been a long time, but it's still possible. How you overcome that is through having a plan, buying a storm shelter. And look, that can add $15,000, $20,000 or more, depending on how complex of a storm shelter you get and where you put it. Some houses just aren't built well for that. Oh, and don't think basements are gonna save you. The water table is so high here that most houses do not have a basement. Unless it's built on a hill, there's some areas with that. It's very uncommon, and basements tend to have a lot of moisture issues because of the high water table. So you can't just count on going downstairs during a severe tornado storm. Hail as well, you get a lot of hail damage here too, which is crazy. So lots of things about the weather, but Alabama weather will fluctuate so much. In February, you can go from a freeze and then the next day be up into 70s and 80s. So all over the place here, the Gulf Coast really makes our weather patterns just sporadic. Spring can be crazy there. Good thing though, if you like swimming and you get a solar cover, you could potentially be swimming into October or even November. So nice if you have a pool. And as crazy as this next one is, like my eyes, I'm scratching them right now. The pollen, the allergies, it's a real deal here. It's a real thing. This area is so beautiful and green, and all those nice green things create some awful air quality when everything's blooming. You don't want to be out running around outside, and you may have to take some medication too. Otherwise, the allergies can just be a constant year-round issue for you. I know like here recently, something's been blooming that's just been like, trying to film here, my eyes, if they're all bloodshot and red, that's what's going on. All right, so here's the one almost everyone misses when you're looking at Huntsville, Alabama. the traffic and the commute times. So this area has exploded in population recently. Huntsville was rated like the #2 city in the US a couple of years back, and this area is growing, 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 except for the infrastructure. These roads here, they're not built for what's coming. In fact, the city is projecting over the next 50 years, an additional 100,000 residents in Huntsville. So that's why Huntsville keeps annexing more land, but the local infrastructure cannot support this. So that's making that 15-mile away house that you're looking at or suburb, that can make that into 45 minutes to an hour away, depending on the time of day and the traffic. And a lot of these roads, they're 4-lane roads, 2 going this way, 2 going this way, maybe a divided median. That's it. So a wreck blocks that whole thing down. I don't know how they're going to fix it, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare as they upgrade that road work, which further is going to congest the area. So you just have to be really careful, look at the map to pay attention to those red spots and those yellow spots for the traffic. Now, I'll say getting around middle of the day in the city like this, not so bad. You can blitz over from place to place, but the drivers here are really not that great. Wrecks are very, very common. And a lot of the way the city's designed, you have one road, people wanting to go this way, people wanting to go this way, and having to merge actually in the same lane to get to the 2 different places. You think for a city of engineers and rocket scientists, they would have made the infrastructure better, but apparently they never saw it would get this big. That's why though, if commute is a major concern to you, you need to reach out to our team, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, because what looks close on the map may be way further than you want to be. Just tell us what you're looking for, what you want, and we'll help you find that perfect place. So cannot wait to hear from you. However, one thing I know every one of you is asking is Huntsville safe? What are the good neighborhoods? What are the bad neighborhoods? What do I need to know? Well, this is where you need to be looking at third-party resources, crime data maps. The city of Huntsville, I'll tell you what they're saying. They're saying that crime is going down. That's official that they're seeing, but third-party websites still question some of that. So do your due diligence and think who has the bias in each situation. The city obviously wants to report better information and will maybe massage that data. Not saying they are, but they have a vested interest in showing that crime prevention is working. We do have the FBI in the area though, so that's a massive presence. But get a variety of inputs and resources, third-party crime maps, and really do your due diligence there of what you're looking for. But I will say this, when it comes to crime, most people, or feelings of safety, most people, it's a feeling. If you break it down to what's important to you, like for example, as much as people hate HOAs, do you want to be in an HOA where people are now forced to keep their yards clean, to keep things picked up and grass cut, maintained, or they face a fine? Those are kind of things you need to be thinking about, those trade-offs. The other thing though, as far as crime, Alabama is a constitutional carry state, which means you don't have to have that permit, a concealed carry permit to conceal carry in the state. I still recommend you do anytime you're crossing state borders. But further on that note, when you get out into the rural, people don't be surprised as soon as you get out in the country, people are going to be firing their guns recreationally. Speaking of guns, speaking of all that, and I know you may not be used to that from where you're moving from. It catches a lot of people off guard, and especially if you have pets, that can freak them out. The arsenal here, yeah, they do munitions testing. You've got rocket testing here. You've got a lot of big booms, and so frequently it is nice. The Redstone team will post on Facebook, hey, that loud explosion you heard was this, or prepare for loud explosions later today. We're doing this, or this. Just funny to me that the city has to put that disclaimer out. All right, so if schools are a make or break for you on the list, here is everything you need to know about schools here in the area. If you are homeschooled, like my family's doing, like I was homeschooled, Alabama is actually pretty homeschool friendly. I'd give it about a 7 or an 8 out of 10. It's required that you are under a cover school, but you get choices on where that is, and different cover schools will have their rules on curriculum and whatnot. As far as public schools in the area go, the Alabama Department of Education, there's a website here that you can check out, and you can actually compare every school against each other and against others in the state, and it gives you a very detailed breakdown on where they're scoring. Lots of quantitative data. However, for qualitative data, this is where you need to be really doing that research, looking at a mixture of third-party websites and reviews if this is important to you. But know this, the school zones are changing here in Huntsville. Because of this growth, we're getting new elementary schools, middle schools, and that's causing the maps to change, with some parents being quite upset when they talk about they may be right next to a school, but due to the bus routes, their kid has to go 45 minutes on the bus somewhere else. So really pay attention to that and know they are changing. So again, if school zones are important to you, do that research and verify that the house you're looking at is in that school zone and hasn't been redistricted yet. So as far as things to do, Huntsville, Alabama is in the process of trying to put $200 million behind fixing one of the big issues here, which is when it comes to attracting big gigs into the area. The Von Braun Center, that's one of the big groups I've seen, where a lot of shows and artists will come by, but they're not massive. They're not in Tennessee. They're not able to attract the top talent. So the city is trying to do a special tax zones and drive to raise that $200 million to put much-needed upgrade to the Von Braun Center. As far as other things to do in the area, this place continues to grow. Madison has been exploding. You've got the new, they're not very good. I'm gonna just tell you, they're a minor league baseball team, the Rock State Trash Pandas, and I've seen Major League, and they're just not very good. But you know, it's something you can do for fun. Yeah, there are no Major League teams here in the area, so if you are a big sports fanatic, that's going to be a massive miss here. As far as other things to do, you've got the Bridge Streets, you've got, a new IKEA just came to the area, and we went there the other day, and it was hilarious. I went to the one over in Virginia, and it was like a massive $300,000 square foot IKEA. I knew the one here in Huntsville was smaller. I was thinking, yeah, maybe 100,000. No, this was in a strip mall, and that IKEA was the smallest I've ever seen. My wife went over to one in Holland recently, and we both went in there, and while the people were nice, it's just a very small building. It's convenient that you don't have to drive to Atlanta to get your furniture. It's a nice pickup point if you order online, but it was not what you're thinking. I laughed, it was hilarious. But there is a lot more coming to the area. There's more restaurants, more dining, which is phenomenal. But still not as much as any other major cities. Other investments that the cities are making, they've just been putting a lot of money into upgrading the recreational center, adding more pickleball courts, into renovating one of the old high schools and making it into an art center. So more and more, the city's putting more to do. Now, actually, here's something crazy though, when it comes to things to do, there is a very few parts in Huntsville that's paid parking. And I forget about that living here and take it for granted. But especially when we get into suburbs, very few paid parking. Really in Huntsville, a lot of it's that downtown area. But speaking of paid parking, the next thing you need to know, you're gonna need to be driving everywhere. There is very, very limited public transportation. Some, I'll put on, actually, when I was driving today, I actually saw one of the bus is picking some people up. And there's a few bus stops, but it's not a robust public transportation system. There's not a lot of alternative modes of transportation. You don't have a train. You don't have bike paths. It is very much a car-dependent city. And now some of these services are helping to alleviate it, but it is not a robust public transportation system. And that can really be unfortunate if you are unable to drive or don't want to drive everywhere. All right, if you are picturing beautiful mountains and nature everywhere at your back door, yeah, I'm gonna have to reset your expectations. Alabama is flat. Now, there are some good things about that. When I lived in rural Missouri, the windy hills was a nightmare. I'm glad I didn't have to learn to drive on the roads there. However, it is very flat here. If you want to see some mountains over in the Owens Crossroads area, you have a little bit, but by and large, you're not gonna have those huge views. Now, there are some really surprisingly good nature trails in the area. Montesino Park is a popular one. You have Green Mountain, which is my favorite spot. It's a nice, easy 2-mile loop. You've got Rainbow Mountain. So for the outdoorsy, you've got quite a few options. Although, again, I'm not doing any hiking right now. It is way too hot, and the sun, when you actually get to the nice hiking weather in the fall, it sets with daylight savings times here it gets dark so early. By like 4:30, it can be dark. There is absolutely like no twilight, maybe like 10 minutes of twilight here. You don't have the beautiful, gorgeous sunsets. And like, there are a couple of spots up on the hills, like over in Green Mountain, where you can get some of that, but you don't have as much of those beautiful sunsets like, like Hawaii. There are nature trails, there are options, but you're not climbing mountains like like over on the West Coast. You're not, it's just different. And you have to deal with bugginess, humidity, mugginess, and limited daylight hours. I know that was always a challenge for my wife and I when we would get together with our friends to go hiking. Is once it finally got nice, there was like a 2 or 3 week window, and then it was just getting dark too early, or you had to get up really early and go, and it just, you know what? It is what it is. At least there are options, and those options are pretty. So here's what's, as an outsider like you, here's what's absolutely crazy to me about Huntsville. The city center is pretty, you've got lots of people moving and coming and going, it's more transient, but you get 20, 30 minutes outside the city and you'll bump into people who have grown up their entire lives here, generations back, have lived here in the area. That just blows my mind. I've never stayed in an area that long. We moved around a lot, coming from a military with my mom and dad both being in the military. There was a lot of moving around. So it's just very interesting to me. And so you do see that, yeah, people do choose to stay here for a long time. In some of these suburbs, people like their whole lives, we had one neighbor. It was crazy. We had one neighbor, he's passed away, but he was like 90 something. And his family went back to like the 1800s, or it's like before Alabama. Yeah, it was like before Alabama was even a state. That's how long some people will stay here. Their families going back here. So, very interesting. Now that does create a different kind of culture here. Now that can make the culture a little hard to break into sometimes if you're an outsider. Some of these so it can take a lot of effort to really feel maybe at home. But if you just keep trying, you just keep pushing, the Southern hospitality is real. People are very nice here. As long as you're a decent human being, right? People are nice. So it can just sometimes take a little longer when you're an outsider, and people's social spheres they know for 20, 30 years. Huntsville, though, a little less of that, a lot more growth, a lot more, just like us moving to the area, all different walks of life. So something else about the local culture that absolutely blew my mind here in the area is just how it's meme worthy, just how serious people take their local football teams. You will be asked that, your first question. Do you like Alabama or Auburn? It is actually religious fanaticism here for these sports teams. I don't get it. I'm not a sports guy. Can you tell? If you like sports, you're going to fit right in. You're going to make a best buddy just talking about that. If you don't like sports, then go out shopping anytime there's game days, because the stores will be much emptier if the retail staff decide to show up and not call out. Same with wait staff, but yeah, it's that big of a deal here. It's crazy. I don't know, maybe it's because there's not major league teams, so they're just part of that Southern football culture. I don't get it. Another thing I'll say is with the Redstone Arsenal here, military presence, this is, you're gonna see a more patriotic city here, which I love. They'll do different events, 4th of July, that kind of thing, community events. So there's a patriotism, a love for America. You'll see flags around, nice big American flags around, which is phenomenal, going around the area. And then even, in smaller towns, it's not unusual at all to see that. A lot of people end up moving here, retiring here, like my family. It's not, you'll see a lot of veteran and presence here. Now, there's not a massive military training base, so it's not as big of a military town, I would say, as like other areas, but a lot of people, especially with these federal and defense contractor jobs, they like to prioritize hiring veterans into those, that you get that priority access. So that is great to see here, see that appreciation, veterans museums, all that kind of stuff. So right off the bat, this is the one that catches so many people by surprise. Alabama is a buyer beware state, and there are almost none of those left in the country. Maybe they'll update one day, I have no idea. But until then, our job, our team, is to just help you navigate that process when you're moving here. A lot of people go new construction for those builder warranties because of that, but buyer beware means the seller doesn't have to disclose issues that you could discover through a competent home inspector or other things. So just a little bit more nuance to work your way through. The other part is Alabama uses nuclear power. The Huntsville proper may be outside that 10-mile radius of the nuclear power plant in Limestone County, but there's also a 50-mile zone as well. So when you go 50 miles out from that, you pretty much cover this whole North Alabama area. So that can catch some people off guard. Other local, the water sucks. The water is bad, tap water. Nope, it's no-go, it is no-go. Although I'm not really sure how effective, because there's been a lot about that, how effective the recycling programs are. There's not a lot of, that's just not a big thing here in Huntsville. If you've got little ones, daycare is a strain right now too. So it's just hard with all these people moving here. If you're moving and you've got little ones and daycare is an option, or is something you're gonna need, make sure you line that up as soon as possible, because the wait list can be long. I had a friend that was on a wait list for multiple months before they were able to get their kid into a daycare, and they have to drive 30 minutes away to get to that one, which is crazy. It's like a job in itself, just going back and forth between daycare. So that infrastructure hasn't quite caught up. As far as hospitals go, Huntsville Hospital is the major hospital here for the area. And you've got Vanderbilt a couple hours away and Birmingham. The international airport, which is a plus, it's a small one, sometimes a little pricier, but those can be good if you need to, for quickly get somewhere. That's here nearby. Other key things, the taxes here are so low for property taxes. It's incredible. And then there's a homestead exemption, which cuts them in half. This, Alabama does not tax, if you're retiring, this is really locked in here. They're not going to tax your Social Security or military federal pensions, state pensions. That's such a game changer. But your property taxes are your sales tax, they suck, 9%. State taxes, food, no state lottery. I'm trying to think what other oddities. Marijuana, back and forth between the legalized for medical, but not for recreational. And look, some of these things may be exactly what you're looking for. Low taxes, no state lottery, limited marijuana, and then others, that may have just turned you off for this entirely. But let you decide what lifestyle you're looking for. All right, so if you like this video, go check out this cost of living video here, where we did a much deeper dive into the cost of living here in Huntsville, Alabama, to see how far that paycheck is really gonna stretch you. Catch you over there.